The 2023 animated film Elemental was brought to life by a carefully chosen group of voice actors and filmmakers whose personal histories and artistic instincts shaped the heart of the story. At the center of the film are two performances that ground the fantastical world of Element City in emotional authenticity. The first is Leah Lewis, who voices Ember Lumen, and the second is Mamoudou Athie, who voices Wade Ripple. Leah Lewis, known to many viewers for her role in the television series Nancy Drew, entered Elemental with a background that combined screen acting and musical performance. Although she had not previously led a major animated feature, she brought a deep emotional sensitivity to Ember. Lewis has spoken in interviews about her own experiences as the daughter of immigrants, which closely mirrored Ember's struggle as the child of fire immigrants trying to build a life in a city not designed for them. Her understanding of generational expectations and cultural pressure informed the vulnerability in Ember's voice. She modulated her tone carefully, allowing Ember's fiery temper to coexist with fragility and longing. In quieter moments, her performance softens into near whispers, emphasizing Ember's uncertainty about her future. Elemental became a defining project in Lewis's career, introducing her to global audiences and positioning her as a leading voice talent capable of carrying a major studio production. Opposite her, Mamoudou Athie brought warmth and openness to Wade Ripple. Athie had already built a reputation through live-action roles in films and series, demonstrating a gentle charisma and emotional transparency that translated beautifully into voice work. While he had some prior experience in animation, Elemental marked his most prominent animated role to date. Wade's character requires an actor unafraid of emotional expression, as he cries openly and embraces empathy in a way rarely granted to male romantic leads in animated cinema. Athie leaned into this aspect, allowing his voice to crack and swell with feeling. His performance challenged traditional portrayals of masculinity, presenting sensitivity as strength. After Elemental, Athie's association with such a tender and beloved character expanded his appeal to family audiences and highlighted his versatility as a performer. Supporting performances also added depth to the film. Ronnie Del Carmen, a longtime creative force within Pixar, voiced Bernie Lumen, Ember's father. Del Carmen is widely respected for his story work on films such as Inside Out, and his experience behind the scenes gave him a nuanced understanding of character arcs. As Bernie, he conveyed the exhaustion and pride of a father who sacrificed everything for his daughter's future. Sheila Ami voiced Cinder Lumen, Ember's mother, infusing her lines with both warmth and subtle melancholy. Together, their performances grounded the fantastical premise in the recognizable rhythms of immigrant family life. Behind the microphone, the creative leadership of Elemental played an equally significant role. The film was directed by Peter Sohn, who had previously directed The Good Dinosaur and voiced characters in several Pixar projects. Elemental was particularly personal for Sohn, whose parents immigrated from Korea to the United States. He has described the film as a love letter to his parents and to the immigrant communities that shaped his childhood. This autobiographical influence is evident in the specificity of Ember's family dynamic and in the film's exploration of cultural neighborhoods within Element City. The screenplay was developed by John Hoberg, Kat Lickle, and Brenda Shaw, working closely with Sohn. Their collaborative process involved multiple rewrites as they refined the balance between romance, social commentary, and comedy. The writing team sought to ensure that the allegory of elements coexisting did not become overly abstract. Instead, they focused on character-driven storytelling, allowing audiences to connect emotionally before analyzing the metaphor. Their dialogue blends humor with heartfelt confession, reflecting Pixar's long-standing commitment to layered storytelling. Production was overseen by Denise Ream, a veteran producer at Pixar. Ream had previously worked on films such as Cars 2 and The Good Dinosaur, navigating complex production pipelines and large creative teams. Her experience proved crucial in guiding Elemental through its lengthy development, particularly as the studio adapted to new workflows during changing industry conditions. Ream supported Sohn's vision while ensuring that the technical and narrative components remained cohesive. The visual identity of Elemental was shaped by a team of animators and production designers who embraced the challenge of rendering characters made of fire and water as emotionally expressive beings. Supervising animators studied fluid dynamics and flame behavior extensively, but they also prioritized readability of facial expressions. The fire characters flicker and spark in ways that reflect their moods, while the water characters ripple and splash with subtle shifts in emotion. This required new simulation techniques and close collaboration between artists and technical directors. The film score was composed by Thomas Newman, whose long history with Pixar includes Finding Nemo and WALL-E. Newman's music for Elemental combines delicate piano motifs with sweeping orchestral passages, underscoring the romance between Ember and Wade, while also highlighting the bustling energy of Element City. His ability to create themes that feel both intimate and expansive added emotional resonance to key scenes. The score supports the voice performances without overpowering them, allowing silence and subtlety to carry as much weight as grand musical crescendos. Pixar Animation Studios itself, under the larger umbrella of Pixar Animation Studios and its parent company Walt Disney Pictures, provided the institutional framework that made Elemental possible. Pixar's culture of iterative storytelling meant that the film underwent numerous story reels and test screenings before reaching its final form. This environment encourages directors to refine character motivations and emotional beats repeatedly, which is evident in the polished final narrative. When Elemental was released in 2023 by Pixar Animation Studios and Walt Disney Pictures, its initial box office performance sparked industry debate. However, what followed became one of the most notable comeback stories in modern animated cinema. Through steady word of mouth, international enthusiasm, and strong repeat viewings from families, the film gradually transformed from a modest opener into a global success. This slow burn trajectory itself became part of its cultural narrative, reinforcing the idea that emotional storytelling can build longevity beyond opening weekend numbers. At the center of Elemental's cultural resonance is its allegory of immigration and identity. Audiences around the world connected to Ember Lumen's struggle to reconcile family expectations with personal desire. In countries with strong immigrant communities, viewers described seeing their own lives reflected in the film's depiction of generational tension. Discussions flourished online about the symbolism of fire people living in neighborhoods not designed for them, facing structural barriers and subtle exclusion. Parents and children watched together and often interpreted the message differently, leading to meaningful family conversations. For first-generation viewers, the story felt personal. For younger audiences, it offered a gentle introduction to ideas about belonging and empathy. Social media played a significant role in amplifying Elemental's impact. Short clips of Ember and Wade's romantic moments circulated widely on platforms such as TikTok and Instagram, often paired with emotional captions about forbidden love or cultural pressure. Wade's openly emotional personality became a meme in its own right. Many users celebrated his willingness to cry, framing him as a refreshing example of emotionally expressive masculinity in mainstream animation. Fan edits highlighted his tears in slow motion, transforming scenes into viral expressions of vulnerability. The romantic core of the story also resonated with young adult audiences who might not traditionally prioritize animated releases. Many viewers described the film as one of Pixar's most overt love stories, comparing its tone to earlier studio romances while noting its modern sensibility. This broadened the demographic reach beyond small children, making Elemental a favorite date night film for some couples. The dynamic between fire and water was frequently referenced in online discussions about opposites attract relationships. Merchandise followed the film's growing popularity. Plush toys of Ember and Wade, designed to capture their glowing and translucent textures, became popular items in Disney stores. Children were drawn to the contrast between Ember's flickering brightness and Wade's fluid transparency. Themed clothing lines incorporated Elemental-inspired color palettes of warm reds and cool blues. Back-to-school supplies featured stylized artwork of Element City's skyline, blending fantasy architecture with playful Elemental motifs. The film's presence extended into Disney-themed parks as well. Character meet and greet experiences featuring Ember and Wade appeared in select parks, allowing families to interact with costumed performers whose designs carefully simulated the illusion of flame and water. Projections and light effects were used to create shimmering outlines, reinforcing the magical quality of the characters. These park appearances strengthened the film's intergenerational appeal, as parents who connected with its emotional themes could share tangible experiences with their children. Music from Elemental, while not structured as a traditional musical, still generated cultural ripples. The original song Steal the Show by Lauv gained popularity as a romantic anthem associated with the film. Its soft, contemporary sound appealed to teenagers and young adults, extending the movie's influence beyond the theater. Fan-made lyric videos and acoustic covers proliferated online, embedding the song within playlists focused on love and longing. Even listeners who had not yet seen the film encountered its emotional tone through music streaming platforms. In classrooms, educators referenced Elemental when discussing themes of diversity and empathy. Teachers found the allegory accessible for children, using the Elemental framework to explain abstract social concepts without overwhelming young students. Discussions about how different communities coexist within Element City offered opportunities to talk about fairness, opportunity, and understanding. This educational adoption contributed to the film's generational significance, positioning it as more than entertainment. Internationally, Elemental performed particularly well in countries across Asia and Europe. Many critics observed that its immigrant narrative resonated strongly in multicultural urban centers. Audiences appreciated that the story avoided simplistic villainy. Instead of presenting a single antagonist, the film portrays systemic challenges and misunderstandings. This nuance encouraged deeper conversation among adult viewers and critics alike. Pop culture references to Elemental began appearing in online comics, parody videos, and fan art communities. Artists reimagined the characters in alternate styles, including anime-inspired designs and minimalist sketches. Cosplay communities experimented with creative ways to embody fire and water at conventions, using LED lighting and reflective fabrics to mimic elemental textures. These fan expressions demonstrated how deeply the visual concept captured imaginations. Elemental also contributed to broader conversations about representation within animation. While Pixar had previously explored themes of emotion and memory in films like Inside Out, Elemental centered its narrative on the immigrant experience in a more direct way. Commentators noted the importance of having a director like Peter Sohn drawing from personal history. This authenticity was frequently cited as a reason the story felt sincere rather than didactic. Generationally, Elemental arrived at a time when many families were renegotiating ideas about career expectations, passion, and stability. Ember's conflict between taking over her father's shop and pursuing her own path mirrored real-world tensions experienced by young adults in rapidly changing economies. Older viewers empathized with Bernie's sacrifices, while younger viewers identified with Ember's desire for self-definition. This dual perspective ensured that the film did not speak only to children but created shared emotional space across ages. Over time, Elemental's reputation solidified as an example of resilience both within its narrative and in its commercial journey. Its gradual rise in box office revenue became symbolic of the film's message about patience and perseverance. Audiences who discovered it later often expressed surprise that it had not been an immediate phenomenon, which further fueled curiosity and repeat viewing. In the broader landscape of children's media, Elemental reinforced the idea that animated films can tackle complex social themes without sacrificing humor or visual spectacle. Its blend of romance, comedy, and cultural commentary influenced conversations about what family entertainment can achieve. Rather than relying solely on fast-paced action or slapstick humor, it prioritized emotional intimacy. This choice may shape future animated projects seeking to balance spectacle with sincerity. The making of Elemental was a long and evolving journey that reflected both technological ambition and deeply personal storytelling. Inside Pixar Animation Studios, the project developed over several years, going through major structural changes before arriving at its final form. Director Peter Sohn initially conceived the story as a broad exploration of elements living together in a city, but early versions of the film leaned more heavily into world building than character intimacy. As story reels were screened internally, the creative team realized that the emotional core needed sharpening. Over time, the narrative narrowed its focus to the relationship between Ember and Wade, allowing the allegory to feel grounded rather than abstract. One of the most fascinating aspects of production was the challenge of animating fire and water as expressive characters. Pixar had previously tackled complex natural elements, notably water in Finding Nemo and fire effects in various projects, but never as central protagonists. Elemental required entirely new simulation tools. Technical directors collaborated with animators to design a hybrid system that combined physically accurate fluid dynamics with stylized exaggeration. If the fire behaved too realistically, Ember's face would distort unpredictably. If it was too controlled, she would lose the organic flicker that made her feel alive. Finding that balance demanded countless tests. The animation team created a layered approach for Ember's body. Beneath the surface flames was a stable character rig that defined her posture and facial structure. Over this, procedural flame simulations added motion and glow. This allowed animators to craft subtle expressions while still preserving the illusion that she was made of living fire. Similarly, Wade's watery form required a translucent shader that could ripple without obscuring his eyes and mouth. Early prototypes made him appear either too glass-like or too gelatinous. Artists studied slow-motion footage of splashing water and consulted fluid physics experts, but they ultimately prioritized emotional clarity over strict realism. Voice recording also played a pivotal role in shaping animation. Leah Lewis and Mamoudou Athie recorded many of their lines together, which is somewhat rare in animation production. This collaborative recording process allowed them to build chemistry organically. The animators then studied video references of the actors performing their lines. Subtle gestures, like the way Athie leaned forward during emotional moments, influenced Wade's posture. Lewis's hand movements during heated exchanges inspired the way Ember's flames flared upward. By anchoring the characters in real human performance, the team ensured authenticity even within fantastical forms. Throughout development, the story underwent significant rewrites. Early drafts featured a more overt external antagonist, including a city official who explicitly opposed integration between elements. However, as screenings progressed, the filmmakers recognized that the story felt more powerful when the conflict stemmed from systemic design and internal fears rather than a single villain. This decision shifted the tone toward romance and personal growth. Removing a clear-cut antagonist required rethinking stakes, which led to the introduction of the flooding crisis as both a literal and metaphorical threat. Deleted concepts reveal how much the film evolved. At one point, there were extended sequences exploring other elemental districts, including air and earth communities, with distinct architectural styles. Some of these ideas were trimmed for pacing, as the central love story demanded focus. Storyboard artists experimented with elaborate action sequences involving runaway trains and collapsing bridges made of crystal. While visually impressive, many were ultimately simplified to maintain emotional momentum. The production period coincided with significant changes in the animation industry, including remote collaboration challenges. Teams adapted to hybrid workflows, sharing animation tests digitally and conducting virtual story meetings. Despite physical distance, the collaborative spirit remained strong. Pixar's tradition of braintrust sessions, where directors present rough cuts to fellow filmmakers for candid feedback, continued to shape Elemental. These sessions encouraged vulnerability from Sohn, who openly discussed how personal the immigrant storyline was to him. Lighting and rendering presented their own obstacles. Because Ember emits light, she constantly affects her environment. This required dynamic lighting systems capable of simulating how her glow would reflect off nearby surfaces. In scenes where Ember and Wade interact closely, artists had to calculate how water would refract her light, creating shimmering color patterns. These details demanded significant computing power and extended rendering times. Yet the results contribute to the film's immersive atmosphere, where every interaction between elements feels tangible. Composer Thomas Newman was brought into the process early enough to influence tone. Rough story reels were screened for him so he could begin sketching musical themes that matched the evolving narrative. In some cases, his gentle piano motifs inspired animators to elongate certain shots, allowing emotion to breathe. The interplay between music and animation was iterative, with sequences adjusted to align precisely with crescendos or pauses in the score. Anecdotes from production highlight how specific scenes transformed over time. The romantic sequence in which Ember and Wade create glass sculptures together originally played with more comedic beats. Test audiences responded positively to the humor, but the filmmakers felt the emotional shift toward intimacy needed greater sincerity. Animators refined the pacing, softening exaggerated gestures and emphasizing eye contact. Lighting artists enhanced the glow of molten glass, turning the scene into one of the film's most visually poetic moments. Another evolving moment was the confrontation between Ember and her father. Early versions leaned into loud argumentation, with Ember's flames exploding dramatically. Later revisions introduced quieter pauses, allowing silence to carry weight. Leah Lewis re-recorded certain lines to convey restraint rather than fury. This subtle adjustment deepened the realism of their relationship, demonstrating how iterative voice work can transform emotional impact. The collaborative nature of Pixar's pipeline meant that storyboard artists, animators, writers, and technical teams constantly influenced one another. If a visual gag emerged during animation tests, writers might adjust dialogue to support it. If a line reading felt particularly poignant, animators would enhance facial nuance to match. Elemental's final form is the result of this continuous dialogue across departments. Elemental unfolds as both a romantic drama and a family story, structured in a way that gradually reveals its emotional depth beneath a colorful and comedic surface. Produced by Pixar Animation Studios, the film follows a classical narrative arc while subtly weaving in social allegory and generational tension. Its pacing is deliberate, allowing audiences of different ages to settle into the world of Element City before fully confronting the emotional stakes. The story opens with a prologue that establishes the immigrant journey of Ember's parents. This introductory sequence functions almost like a silent montage, showing Bernie and Cinder Lumen arriving in Element City with hope but encountering immediate barriers. The city's infrastructure is clearly not designed for fire residents. Signs discourage their presence, spaces are unsafe for their bodies, and opportunities are limited. This early framing grounds the narrative in struggle and aspiration. By beginning with the parent's sacrifice rather than the young protagonist, the film invites empathy across generations from the outset. The narrative then transitions into Ember's young adulthood. She is being trained to inherit her father's shop, a small convenience store located in the Fire District. This setting becomes a central narrative anchor. It represents tradition, obligation, and family pride. The pacing here is intentionally slower, filled with small comedic beats that introduce Ember's temper and the rhythms of daily life. Customers from different elemental backgrounds visit, offering subtle world building through humor. Children laugh at the visual gags, while adults may recognize the coded references to cultural enclaves within large cities. The inciting incident occurs when a plumbing accident causes a leak in the basement of the shop, bringing Wade Ripple into Ember's life. Wade, a city inspector made of water, emerges from the pipes in a literal collision of elements. This meeting is both comic and symbolic. Structurally, it disrupts Ember's contained world. Narratively, it introduces the central romantic tension and the external threat of city regulations that could shut down the family business. From this point forward, the film balances two parallel arcs. One is the romantic development between Ember and Wade. The other is Ember's internal struggle between honoring her father's dream and acknowledging her own desires. The screenplay carefully alternates between scenes of bureaucratic tension and moments of personal vulnerability. This dual structure ensures that the love story never feels detached from the family stakes. The first major turning point arrives when Wade, instead of condemning the shop, empathizes with Ember's situation. His decision to help her rather than penalize her shifts the trajectory of the story from adversarial to collaborative. Emotionally, this moment signals to the audience that Wade will not be a traditional antagonist, but rather a catalyst for growth. For children, This beat emphasizes kindness over conflict. For adults, it underscores the complexity of institutional roles versus personal conscience. As Ember and Wade spend more time together attempting to fix the city's leak problem, the pacing becomes lighter and more adventurous. They travel beyond the fire district, exploring parts of Element City that Ember has never experienced. These sequences function as visual spectacles, showcasing the creativity of the elemental concept. Yet structurally, they also serve as expansion of Ember's worldview. Each new location mirrors her gradual emotional opening. The midpoint of the film centers on a growing awareness of romantic feelings. This section is handled with restraint rather than overt musical declaration. Small gestures, shared glances, and moments of laughter carry the weight. The glass-blowing scene in particular operates as an emotional hinge. Ember's ability to shape molten glass becomes a metaphor for shaping her own identity. Wade's admiration is not merely romantic, but appreciative of her talent. Narratively, this scene deepens intimacy while planting the seed that Ember's future may lie beyond the shop. Conflict intensifies when Ember's father begins planning to officially hand over the store to her. This impending transition heightens stakes. The film slows its pace here, allowing tension to simmer rather than explode immediately. Ember's internal conflict becomes more visible in her interactions. She hesitates, her temper flares unpredictably, and silence creeps into conversations that were once warm. Children may perceive the emotional discomfort through tone and expression, while adults recognize the painful familiarity of disappointing a parent. The second major turning point occurs when Ember finally admits her feelings for Wade and her uncertainty about inheriting the shop. This confession is not triumphant, but fraught with fear. It triggers a temporary rift between father and daughter. Structurally, this functions as the low point of the narrative. Ember appears to lose both romantic and familial stability. The flooding crisis escalates simultaneously, creating external danger that mirrors internal turmoil. The climax brings together these threads. As floodwaters threaten the fire district, Ember and Wade collaborate to save the community. The literal blending of fire and water in moments of sacrifice underscores the thematic message that difference can create strength rather than destruction. The pacing quickens, combining action with emotional reconciliation. When Ember believes Wade may have evaporated, the film pauses in near stillness, allowing grief to register fully before relief arrives. This emotional fake-out intensifies audience investment. The resolution unfolds with a quieter tone. Ember reconciles with her father, who ultimately acknowledges her individuality. His symbolic bow of respect represents generational understanding. This gesture provides catharsis not only for Ember, but for viewers who have navigated similar familial expectations. The romance resolves not in grand spectacle, but in mutual commitment to growth and exploration. Structurally, Elemental follows a classic three-act format, yet it avoids rigid predictability by focusing on emotional authenticity. Comedic beats are strategically placed to release tension before heavier conversations. Visual spectacle alternates with intimate dialogue, ensuring that younger audiences remain engaged while adults appreciate nuance. The absence of a singular villain allows the story to focus on internal growth rather than conquest. The narrative pacing is particularly notable for its patience. Unlike some animated features that rely on rapid-fire jokes, Elemental lingers in moments of silence and eye contact. This choice reinforces its romantic identity. The integration of music through Thomas Newman's score enhances transitions between acts, guiding emotional rhythm without overt exposition. At its core, Elemental is a story about identity, belonging, and the delicate balance between honoring one's roots and forging an independent path. Produced by Pixar Animation Studios and directed by Peter Sohn, the film uses the fantastical premise of anthropomorphic elements to explore deeply human emotional terrain. Beneath its colorful surface lies a meditation on generational expectation, cultural assimilation, vulnerability, and the courage required to choose one's own future. One of the most prominent themes is identity shaped by family legacy. Ember Lumen grows up with a clear sense of duty. Her parents sacrificed comfort and familiarity to build a new life in Element City. The shop they establish is more than a business. It is a symbol of survival and pride. Ember's understanding of herself is initially tied to this inheritance. She believes her worth is measured by her ability to carry forward her father's dream. This dynamic reflects the experience of many children in immigrant families, where gratitude and obligation intertwine. The film does not portray this expectation as cruel or oppressive in a simplistic way. Instead, it shows how love can coexist with pressure and how both can become burdensome when unspoken. Self-acceptance emerges as a parallel theme. Ember's fiery temperament is treated both as a source of humor and as an obstacle. She struggles to control her bursts of anger, which she interprets as personal failure. Throughout the story, she learns that her intensity is not inherently destructive. When channeled through creativity, as seen in her glassmaking, her fire becomes transformative. This shift carries a moral lesson for younger audiences. Traits that feel like flaws may contain hidden strengths. Emotional intensity can be redirected rather than suppressed. The romance between Ember and Wade Ripple introduces the theme of vulnerability as strength. Wade's character subverts traditional depictions of masculinity in animated cinema. He cries openly, expresses affection without hesitation, and prioritizes empathy over pride. His emotional transparency challenges Ember's guarded nature. Through their relationship, the film suggests that openness fosters connection. Children watching may absorb the subtle message that sensitivity is not weakness. Adults may recognize the broader cultural implications of presenting such a character in a mainstream family film. Cultural boundaries and social integration form another thematic layer. Element City is structured in ways that privilege some groups over others. Fire residents face infrastructural challenges and implicit exclusion. Rather than delivering heavy-handed moral lectures, the film illustrates systemic imbalance through visual storytelling. A simple example is the absence of fire-friendly architecture in many parts of the city. This gentle allegory invites viewers to reflect on real-world inequities without feeling preached to. The moral message centers on empathy and adaptation. Coexistence requires intentional design, not just passive tolerance. Family bonds are portrayed with complexity. Bernie Lumen embodies parental sacrifice. He carries trauma from displacement and channels it into fierce protection of his daughter. His dream for Ember is rooted in love, yet it inadvertently confines her. The eventual reconciliation between father and daughter reinforces the theme that love evolves. True support sometimes means releasing control. This moment resonates strongly with adult viewers who have experienced the tension between protecting children and allowing them independence. The concept of destiny versus choice also weaves through the narrative. Ember grows up believing her path is predetermined. The shop is waiting for her. Her community assumes continuity. Yet as she explores Element City with Wade, she discovers new possibilities. The film carefully avoids framing her departure from the shop as rejection of heritage. Instead, it presents growth as expansion rather than abandonment. The moral message here is nuanced. Honoring one's roots does not require sacrificing personal fulfillment. Identity can be both inherited and self-defined. Sacrifice appears in both literal and emotional forms. During the flooding crisis, characters risk their safety for one another. This external danger mirrors the internal sacrifices Ember contemplates. Choosing love and self-discovery means risking her father's disappointment. The film acknowledges that growth involves loss. There is no path forward without discomfort. For children, the action sequence provides excitement. For adults, it underscores the emotional stakes of change. Freedom is depicted not as rebellion, but as clarity. Ember does not storm away from her family. She arrives at understanding gradually. When her father finally bows to her in recognition of her individuality, the gesture symbolizes intergenerational respect. This resolution reinforces a hopeful moral vision. Communication and empathy can bridge divides that once seemed insurmountable. Another subtle theme is emotional regulation. Ember's journey includes learning to pause before reacting. This is portrayed visually through the way her flames flare and then settle. Young viewers may intuitively grasp the lesson that strong feelings require awareness and balance. The film does not demand that Ember extinguish her fire. Instead, it shows her integrating it into a broader sense of self. Love across difference stands as a central pillar. Fire and water appear incompatible by nature. Their very touch seems dangerous. Yet through patience and creativity, Ember and Wade find ways to interact safely. This metaphor extends beyond romance. It speaks to friendship, collaboration, and community across cultural or ideological lines. The moral message encourages curiosity rather than fear when encountering difference. The film also explores the theme of community responsibility. Wade's role as a city inspector places him within institutional structures. His choice to advocate for the fire district suggests that systems can change when individuals within them act compassionately. This reinforces a belief in incremental progress rather than cynical resignation. Balancing fantasy adventure with emotional depth is one of Elemental's most delicate achievements. The vibrant visuals and playful elemental physics captivate children. Beneath that spectacle lies a tapestry of moral reflections accessible to adults. The film trusts its audience to perceive meaning without explicit explanation. It does not conclude with a didactic speech summarizing its lessons. Instead, it leaves viewers with images of reconciliation, partnership, and possibility. The animation style of Elemental represents one of the most ambitious visual undertakings in the history of Pixar animation studios. From the earliest stages of development, director Peter Sohn and his team understood that the film's emotional credibility would depend on whether audiences believed in characters made of fire, water, air, and earth. The challenge was not simply technical realism, but emotional readability. The animators needed viewers to see thoughts and feelings in flames and ripples. The art direction embraces contrast as its central principle. Fire characters glow with saturated oranges, reds, and hints of pink at their core. Water characters shimmer in cool blues and aquamarine tones. These complementary color palettes are not arbitrary. They reinforce the thematic opposition between Ember and Wade while visually harmonizing when placed side by side. In scenes where the two interact closely, their colors subtly reflect onto one another, creating purples and soft gradients that symbolize blending identities. Character design plays a crucial role in visual storytelling. Ember's silhouette is sharp and angular, with flame tips that flick upward unpredictably. This conveys her volatile temperament. Even when she stands still, her body language feels active because her surface is in constant motion. By contrast, Wade's shape is rounded and fluid. His edges are soft, and his posture often leans forward slightly, suggesting openness and curiosity. The animators used these physical distinctions to communicate personality before dialogue even begins. Facial expression required a hybrid approach. Realistic fire does not have fixed features, yet audiences rely on stable eyes and mouths to interpret emotion. The solution was to embed a structured facial rig within the elemental simulations. Ember's eyes remain consistent even as flames dance around them. When she grows angry, the fire intensifies in brightness and height, but her pupils anchor the viewer's focus. Similarly, Wade's watery body refracts light, yet his eyes stay readable through subtle shading adjustments. This careful balance allows the characters to feel both magical and human. Environmental design expands the elemental metaphor into architecture and city planning. Element City is divided into districts tailored to different inhabitants. The fire neighborhood glows warmly, with lantern-like streetlights and materials resistant to heat. Surfaces often appear metallic or ceramic, reflecting Ember's glow. The water district features flowing canals and translucent structures that ripple gently. Air residents inhabit high-altitude zones filled with soft clouds and pastel hues. Earth areas incorporate textured stone and lush greenery. Each district not only supports its residents physically, but visually reflects cultural identity. Lighting functions almost as a character in the film. Because Ember emits light, scenes shift dynamically based on her emotional state. When she feels joyful, her glow brightens, casting warm highlights on nearby surfaces. During moments of doubt, her flame dims slightly, and shadows grow longer. This interplay between internal feeling and external illumination reinforces the connection between emotion and environment. In scenes where Ember and Wade stand close together, their contrasting light qualities create intricate reflections. Water refracts firelight, producing shimmering patterns that underscore intimacy. Movement is equally expressive. Animators study the physics of flame and fluid motion, but they stylize these references to enhance storytelling clarity. Ember's steps leave brief, glowing footprints that fade quickly, symbolizing both impact and impermanence. Wade's movements create small splashes and droplets that arc gracefully before rejoining his form. In comedic sequences, exaggeration heightens physical humor, such as when Wade momentarily loses composure and parts of him splash outward. Yet, even in these moments, the animation remains grounded in believable internal logic. Technological breakthroughs were necessary to achieve this level of detail. New simulation tools were developed to allow fire and water to interact without overwhelming rendering systems. Traditionally, fluid simulations require extensive computing power. Here, the team created optimized layers that preserved visual complexity while maintaining efficiency. They also introduced advanced volumetric lighting to simulate how Ember's glow would pass through Wade's translucent body. This innovation enhances scenes of physical closeness, where their interaction produces a luminous interplay that feels almost tactile. Visual symbolism permeates the film. Glass becomes a recurring motif, particularly in the glass-blowing sequence. Molten fire shaping transparent material mirrors Ember's internal transformation. The fragile yet resilient nature of glass symbolizes the possibility of unity between opposites. When Ember crafts glass sculptures with Wade, the scene's soft lighting and delicate reflections communicate trust and vulnerability without heavy dialogue. Camera movement in Elemental is more restrained than in some action-driven animated features. The cinematography often favors gentle tracking shots and intimate close-ups. This choice aligns with the film's romantic tone. Rather than relying on rapid cuts, the animators allow scenes to breathe. Close-ups of Ember's flickering eyes or Wade's rippling surface invite viewers to observe subtle changes in expression. Children may simply perceive beauty, while adults notice the nuanced choreography of light and motion. The visual style also draws subtle inspiration from urban multicultural landscapes. Crowded streets filled with diverse elemental forms evoke the vibrancy of real-world cities. Signage incorporates multiple design motifs, suggesting linguistic and cultural diversity without explicit explanation. This layered background detail rewards attentive viewers and reinforces the theme of coexistence. Color palette shifts track emotional progression. Early scenes in the Fire District emphasize warm, enclosed tones, creating a sense of safety but also confinement. As Ember ventures into other parts of the city, cooler hues dominate, expanding visual space. During moments of tension, such as the flooding crisis, the palette becomes more chaotic, with contrasting lights and shadows heightening urgency. By the film's conclusion, balanced blends of warm and cool tones suggest harmony. Music in Elemental plays a subtle yet deeply emotional role, shaping the atmosphere of the film without overwhelming its intimate tone. Unlike some animated features that rely on large-scale musical numbers, Elemental leans into a more understated sonic landscape. The score, composed by Thomas Newman, functions as an emotional undercurrent that gently guides the audience through Ember and Wade's evolving relationship. Newman, known for his distinctive melodic minimalism and delicate orchestration, brings a sensitivity that aligns perfectly with the film's romantic and introspective qualities. From the opening moments, the music establishes warmth and longing. Soft piano motifs accompany the arrival of Ember's parents in Element City, signaling hope mixed with uncertainty. The instrumentation is restrained, often centered on piano, light strings, and subtle percussive textures. This restraint mirrors the immigrant experience depicted on screen. Rather than using bombastic themes, the music feels intimate, almost personal, as if reflecting memories rather than grand spectacle. As Ember grows into adulthood and begins working in her father's shop, the score introduces playful rhythmic elements. Small woodwind flourishes and gentle pizzicato strings echo the bustling energy of the fire district. The music here supports comedic beats without turning them into slapstick. It allows younger audiences to sense liveliness while maintaining emotional continuity for older viewers. One of the most striking aspects of Newman's composition is how he musically represents the contrast between fire and water. Ember's musical theme often carries warmth through mid-range piano chords and glowing string harmonies. Wade's motif, by contrast, introduces airy textures and lighter melodic lines that feel fluid and open. When the two characters begin to connect emotionally, their themes intertwine. Melodies that once stood apart begin to overlap and harmonize, subtly reinforcing the romantic arc without the need for explicit lyrical expression. The glass-blowing sequence stands as a highlight of musical storytelling. As Ember shapes molten glass and Wade watches in admiration, the score swells gently. Strings rise in a slow crescendo while a simple melodic line repeats, creating a sense of suspended time. There are no lyrics declaring love, yet the music communicates intimacy and creative synergy. The sound design during the scene enhances the effect. The soft hiss of heated air, the delicate crackle of flame, and the faint shimmer of cooling glass blend seamlessly with the orchestration. Together, they create a sensory experience that feels almost tactile. The original song Steal the Show, performed by Lauv, plays over the end credits, but also echoes thematically throughout the film's promotional campaign. Unlike traditional animated musical ballads, Steal the Show carries a contemporary pop sound. Its gentle electronic beats and airy vocals align with modern romantic playlists, allowing the film to connect with teenage and young adult audiences. Lyrically, the song captures the vulnerability of falling in love across perceived boundaries. It extends the emotional resonance of the story beyond the narrative itself, becoming an anthem associated with Ember and Wade's bond. Sound design in Elemental is as crucial as the score. Because the characters are literal embodiments of natural elements, their physical presence demands a unique sonic identity. Ember's movements are accompanied by faint crackles and soft whooshes, suggesting constant combustion without sounding threatening. The sound team carefully avoided harsh or chaotic fire noises that might unsettle children. Instead, her audio signature feels warm and rhythmic. Wade's soundscape incorporates gentle splashes and liquid swells. When he moves quickly, there is a subtle rush, like water shifting within a container. During emotional moments, the sound of droplets separating and rejoining his form adds texture to his expressions. This auditory detail reinforces his emotional transparency. When he cries, the sound design emphasizes individual drops, making his tears both literal and symbolic. The environmental soundscape of Element City further enriches immersion. The fire district hums with low warmth, as if embers glow constantly beneath the surface. The water areas echo with distant trickles and flowing currents. Air spaces include soft wind tones that drift in the background. These subtle ambient layers ensure that every location feels distinct without overwhelming dialogue. Silence is used strategically. In the confrontation between Ember and her father, the score retreats almost entirely. This absence of music heightens tension and authenticity. The crackle of Ember's flame and the quiet ambient noise of the shop become painfully prominent. By withholding orchestration, the filmmakers allow the emotional weight of the scene to stand unadorned. When music eventually returns, it feels earned rather than manipulative. During the flooding climax, the score expands in scope. Percussion becomes more pronounced, strings surge with urgency, and harmonies shift to minor keys. Yet even here, Newman avoids excess. The music never eclipses character emotion. Instead, it mirrors the escalating stakes while maintaining clarity. When Ember believes Wade may have evaporated, the music softens again, reducing to a fragile melodic fragment. This musical contraction mirrors her fear of loss. Another subtle achievement is how music bridges generational themes. The motifs associated with Ember's parents carry a slightly different tonal quality, often incorporating deeper string registers. When these themes reappear near the end of the film during reconciliation, they blend with Ember's melody, symbolizing understanding across generations. This musical callback reinforces narrative closure. The film's end credits allow Steal the Show to fully unfold, giving audiences a moment to sit with their emotions. Many viewers carried this song beyond the theater, adding it to personal playlists. Its contemporary style helped Elemental feel current rather than nostalgic, distinguishing it from earlier animated romances. Overall, the music and sound design of Elemental demonstrate restraint, precision, and emotional intelligence. Rather than dominating scenes with theatrical grandeur, the score weaves quietly through the narrative, amplifying subtle gestures and shared glances. Sound effects are crafted to support character identity, making fire and water feel alive in ways that are comforting rather than chaotic. Together, music and sound create an atmosphere where romance, family tension, and personal growth resonate deeply. Elemental proves that in animation, what we hear is just as important as what we see, and sometimes the softest notes carry the greatest emotional impact. When Elemental was released in 2023 by Pixar Animation Studios under Walt Disney Pictures, its reception unfolded in phases rather than arriving as a single unified reaction. The initial box office numbers were widely discussed in industry circles, as the film opened more modestly than many previous Pixar titles. Commentators questioned whether original animated stories could still command immediate theatrical dominance in a marketplace reshaped by streaming habits and franchise expectations. Yet, as weeks passed, the narrative surrounding Elemental began to shift. Critics offered a range of responses. Many praised the film's emotional sincerity and visual ambition. Reviewers highlighted the romance between Ember and Wade as one of Pixar's most fully realized love stories. The chemistry between Leah and Mamoudou Athie was frequently cited as a strength, with particular appreciation for the vulnerability in Athie's portrayal of Wade. Critics noted that his openly emotional personality felt refreshing within the tradition of animated male leads. The film's animation quality received near-universal admiration. Reviewers described the rendering of fire and water as technically groundbreaking. The interplay of light and translucency, particularly in intimate scenes, was often singled out as a visual triumph. Some critics argued that Elemental represented one of the studio's most aesthetically refined works, even if they debated the narrative's overall originality. However, not all reviews were uniformly enthusiastic. Certain commentators felt that the allegory of elements as stand-ins for cultural communities was somewhat familiar, comparing it to earlier animated films that explored coexistence and prejudice. A few critics suggested that the story structure followed a predictable romantic arc. Others argued that while the themes were heartfelt, they were delivered in a gentler, less daring manner than some of Pixar's previous emotionally devastating films. Comparisons to earlier Pixar landmarks such as Inside Out and Coco emerged frequently in reviews. Some writers observed that Elemental did not reach the same level of conceptual surprise as Inside Out, nor the musical exuberance of Coco. Yet others countered that Elemental's strength lay in its intimacy rather than scale. Instead of exploring vast imaginative universes, it focused closely on the interior lives of two characters navigating love and family obligation. Parents responded positively to the film's tone. Many appreciated its absence of overt villainy and its emphasis on empathy. For families seeking entertainment that sparked conversation without overwhelming younger viewers, Elemental felt accessible. Children were captivated by the colorful design and playful physics of fire and water interacting. Adults often reported being unexpectedly moved by the immigrant narrative and generational conflict. This cross-generational appeal became a defining feature of the film's reputation. Audience word of mouth played a crucial role in reshaping perception. As viewers recommended the film to friends and family, box office numbers demonstrated steady legs over time. International markets proved particularly supportive. In several countries, Elemental performed more strongly in its later weeks than in its opening frame. This gradual success story became part of its identity, framing the film as resilient rather than fragile. Awards season recognition was measured but meaningful. While Elemental did not dominate the award circuit, it earned nominations in animation categories from various critics' associations. Its technical achievements in visual effects and animation craftsmanship were acknowledged across industry discussions. Even in cases where it did not secure top prizes, its presence reaffirmed Pixar's continued relevance in animated storytelling. Debates about representation surfaced as well. Some critics praised director Peter Sohn for drawing from personal heritage to shape the immigrant narrative. They saw Elemental as an authentic extension of Pixar's gradual expansion of cultural perspectives. Others debated whether the metaphor of elemental differences sufficiently captured the complexity of real-world cultural dynamics. These discussions, though varied, indicated that the film invited analysis rather than indifference. Online communities contributed to the evolving reception. Fan art, emotional video essays, and social media tributes amplified positive sentiment. Many viewers expressed surprise at how deeply the romance affected them. Wade's emotional transparency became a focal point in commentary, with audiences celebrating a male character who embraces sensitivity without ridicule. This cultural conversation softened earlier skepticism and encouraged new viewers to give the film a chance. Some critics framed Elemental as part of a transitional period for Pixar. Following the pandemic era, when several studio films debuted directly on streaming platforms, theatrical expectations had shifted. Elemental's theatrical run was seen as a test case for original animated features. Its eventual global box office total demonstrated that patient audience building could still yield strong results. This commercial trajectory became intertwined with its critical narrative. There were also discussions about pacing. A minority of reviewers felt the film unfolded more slowly than typical animated fare. Yet supporters argued that this measured pace allowed emotional beats to resonate more authentically. The absence of frenetic humor distinguished Elemental from more joke-dense animated releases. Over time, retrospective assessments grew warmer. As audiences revisited the film through streaming platforms and home media, appreciation for its quiet romance deepened. Some critics revised initial reservations, acknowledging that Elemental's strengths were more subtle than spectacular. The visual poetry of the glass-blowing scene and the reconciliation between Ember and her father became widely cited as emotionally powerful moments. As Elemental continued to find audiences long after its theatrical debut, conversations naturally turned toward its long-term legacy and potential expansion. Produced by Pixar Animation Studios and released by Walt Disney Pictures, the film entered a studio history defined by franchises such as Toy Story, Cars, and The Incredibles. Unlike those properties, Elemental began as a self-contained romantic drama, but its richly imagined world of Element City suggested possibilities that extended far beyond a single narrative. One of the most immediate aspects of its legacy was its commercial endurance. Elemental's slow-building box office success became part of its identity. Industry analysts frequently cited it as an example of how original animation could achieve longevity through word-of-mouth rather than explosive openings. This narrative of resilience influenced studio discussions about theatrical strategies for future Pixar projects. Elemental demonstrated that emotional storytelling with cross-generational appeal could still thrive in cinemas when given time. In terms of direct franchise expansion, speculation about a sequel emerged almost immediately. The open-ended conclusion, in which Ember and Wade choose to explore life together beyond the confines of the Fire District, leaves narrative space for further development. A potential sequel could examine their journey into new parts of Element City or even beyond it. Fans often imagine stories centered on how different elemental communities collaborate to redesign infrastructure for inclusivity, deepening the social themes introduced in the first film. Pixar has historically approached sequels cautiously, often waiting years before revisiting a property. This pattern, seen with films like Finding Nemo and its follow-up Finding Dory, suggests that if Elemental were to receive a continuation, it would likely arrive only after careful development. The studio tends to prioritize emotional necessity over automatic franchise building. Therefore, Elemental's legacy may rest as much on its standalone impact as on any future installments. Beyond potential sequels, the film has already expanded through ancillary media. Children's books retelling the story, illustrated art volumes showcasing concept designs, and behind-the-scenes documentaries have enriched the world for dedicated fans. These materials deepen appreciation for the artistic process and allow audiences to revisit the story in new formats. For younger viewers, storybooks and activity sets keep the characters present in daily life, reinforcing attachment. Merchandising continues to play a significant role in sustaining Elemental's presence. Plush versions of Ember and Wade, designed with textured fabrics to evoke flame and water, remain popular items. Collectible figurines capture the luminous glow effects through translucent plastic and embedded lighting features. Themed apparel often incorporates the contrasting red and blue color schemes, allowing fans to express identification with a particular character or simply celebrate the film's aesthetic. Theme park integration represents another dimension of franchise expansion. Character appearances in Disney parks have strengthened the film's visibility. Interactive installations using projection mapping and lighting effects simulate the illusion of fire flicker and water shimmer, giving visitors immersive experiences. While Elemental has not yet received a dedicated ride attraction, discussions about incorporating Element City into future park expansions highlight the property's imaginative potential. A water-based dark ride or a glow-filled walkthrough experience inspired by the glass-blowing sequence could easily fit within Disney's tradition of blending storytelling and sensory design. Television and streaming possibilities also shape Elemental's legacy. Short-form animated specials focusing on side characters, such as Claude or Gale, could explore other Elemental perspectives. Pixar has previously expanded film universes through shorts attached to theatrical releases or streaming platforms. These bite-sized narratives allow creative experimentation without the scale of a full sequel. Fans often express interest in seeing more of Element City's diverse districts, particularly the air and earth communities that were only briefly glimpsed in the original film. From a broader cultural standpoint, Elemental contributes to Pixar's evolving legacy of personal storytelling. Earlier films like Coco and Inside Out demonstrated the studio's commitment to emotionally driven narratives rooted in specific cultural or psychological themes. Elemental continues this trajectory by centering immigrant identity and generational tension. Its legacy therefore extends beyond merchandise or sequels. It stands as part of a creative era in which Pixar filmmakers draw explicitly from personal heritage. Academically, Elemental has begun appearing in discussions about allegory in contemporary animation. Film studies courses examining representations of multicultural societies sometimes reference Element City as a visual metaphor for urban diversity. This scholarly engagement suggests longevity beyond commercial cycles. When a film enters academic conversation, it often signals deeper cultural resonance. Fan communities also shape legacy. Online forums dedicated to fan fiction and artwork continue to expand the story in imaginative ways. Some fans create alternate timelines exploring what might happen if Ember had chosen to remain in the shop, while others imagine cross-elemental friendships beyond romance. Cosplay communities experiment with lighting technology to replicate Ember's glow or Wade's translucency, keeping the film visible at conventions and cultural gatherings. Economically, Elemental's eventual global box office total reinforced confidence in original animated properties during a period dominated by sequels and reboots. Its financial trajectory may influence studio investment decisions, encouraging continued development of fresh narratives rather than relying exclusively on established franchises. In the long term, Elemental's legacy will likely be defined by its emotional memory. Viewers who saw the film during childhood may grow up associating it with conversations about identity and family. Adults who connected with its immigrant narrative may revisit it as a reminder of generational bridges. Even if it never spawns multiple sequels, its impact as a singular, heartfelt romance within Pixar's catalog secures a place in animation history. Elemental's enduring strength lies not only in its visual beauty or technical innovation, but in the deeply personal ways audiences of different ages connected to its story. Released by Pixar Animation Studios, the film entered family homes and theaters at a time when conversations about identity, belonging, and generational change were already present in everyday life. Because the narrative operates on both literal and symbolic levels, it created space for children, teenagers, parents, and even grandparents to see themselves reflected in different characters. For young children, the connection often begins with the sensory experience. Ember's glowing fire and Wade's rippling water are immediately captivating. Children respond instinctively to color, motion, and playful physics. The simple idea that fire and water can fall in love carries a fairy tale quality that feels accessible. Younger viewers may not consciously analyze the immigrant allegory, but they understand the feeling of being different or of wanting approval from a parent. When Ember struggles to control her temper, children recognize the frustration of overwhelming emotions. Her journey toward emotional balance becomes relatable on a basic developmental level. Older children and early teenagers tend to focus more strongly on the romantic storyline. For many, Elemental becomes a first cinematic depiction of a relationship built on emotional vulnerability rather than dramatic rivalry. Wade's open expression of affection stands in contrast to the teasing or aloof behavior often portrayed in media aimed at young audiences. Teenagers watching the film frequently identify with Ember's uncertainty about her future. The pressure to follow a predetermined path mirrors real-life anxieties about academic expectations and career choices. In this way, Elemental speaks directly to transitional stages of growing up. For adults, especially those from immigrant or multicultural backgrounds, the film resonates on a different frequency. Ember's parents' sacrifices echo real family histories. The small details of the shop, the pride in maintaining tradition, and the fear of losing cultural identity carry emotional weight. Many adult viewers report feeling unexpectedly moved during scenes between Ember and her father. The moment of generational reconciliation often triggers reflection on personal relationships. Some parents see themselves in Bernie, recognizing both the protective love and the difficulty of letting go. Others see their own struggles mirrored in Ember's quiet internal conflict. This layered emotional design allows families to experience the film together while interpreting it differently. A child may leave the theater remembering the colorful city and the sweet romance. A parent may leave contemplating conversations they have not yet had with their own children. This shared yet distinct interpretation fosters intergenerational dialogue. In many households, Elemental became a starting point for discussions about family expectations, career aspirations, and cultural heritage. Fan communities quickly formed around this emotional resonance. Online platforms filled with personal essays describing how the film reflected individual experiences. Viewers shared stories about balancing respect for parents with personal ambition. Some described watching the film with their families and discussing difficult topics afterward. These testimonials contributed to the sense that Elemental was not merely entertainment, but a catalyst for reflection. Cosplay and fan art also demonstrate emotional attachment. Recreating Ember's glow through creative lighting effects or designing translucent costumes inspired by Wade requires dedication and affection. At conventions, fans who embody these characters often describe feeling empowered by their symbolism. Fire and water become metaphors for aspects of identity that once felt incompatible. Through costume and performance, audiences transform personal connection into visible celebration. Music further deepened generational resonance. The end credit song Steal the Show, performed by Lauv, found particular popularity among teenagers and young adults. Its contemporary sound helped bridge the gap between traditional family animation and modern pop culture. Older viewers might gravitate more toward the orchestral score by Thomas Newman, appreciating its subtle emotional cues. This dual musical appeal reinforces the film's cross-generational reach. Another significant factor in audience connection is the portrayal of masculinity. Wade's emotional transparency resonated strongly with viewers who longed for representations of men expressing vulnerability without shame. Parents of young boys have commented on appreciating a character who models empathy and openness. Teenagers have noted that seeing a male lead cry openly challenges stereotypes they encounter elsewhere. This aspect of the film extends its emotional influence beyond the specific narrative of fire and water. Repeat viewings have contributed to Elemental's lasting impact. Families often return to the film on streaming platforms, discovering new layers with each watch. Children who initially focused on visual spectacle may, over time, begin to grasp the deeper themes. Adults who are moved by the immigrant storyline might later notice subtler details in background design or dialogue. This evolving interpretation strengthens generational resonance because the film grows with its audience. International viewers have also found unique points of connection. In multicultural urban centers, the depiction of neighborhoods tailored to specific communities mirrors real-world geography. Audiences in such cities often describe feeling seen by the film's environmental storytelling. The idea that infrastructure itself can either welcome or exclude becomes emotionally tangible through Elemental's world-building. The emotional connection extends to quieter moments as well. The glass-blowing scene, for example, has become a favorite among couples. Its gentle pacing and luminous visuals invite viewers to reflect on shared creativity and trust. Some fans have even incorporated imagery from this scene into wedding decorations or anniversary tributes, demonstrating how the film's romance transcends age categories. Ultimately, Elemental achieves generational resonance because it refuses to simplify emotion. It trusts children to sense complexity and adults to embrace vulnerability. It offers spectacle without sacrificing sincerity. In doing so, it creates a shared emotional space where families can sit together, laugh at playful elemental mishaps, and perhaps wipe away tears during moments of reconciliation. The film's legacy will likely be measured not only in box office totals or merchandise sales, but in the private conversations it inspired. Children who saw themselves in Ember's fiery determination may carry that confidence into adolescence. Parents who recognize their own fears in Bernie's protective instincts may approach their children with renewed empathy. Teenagers who admired Wade's emotional courage may feel freer to express their own feelings. The character development in Elemental is built around transformation rather than conquest. Produced by Pixar Animation Studios and directed by Peter Sohn, the film follows a protagonist whose journey is internal, emotional, and relational. Instead of defeating a traditional villain, the characters must overcome fear, misunderstanding, and inherited expectations. This approach aligns the story with modern interpretations of classic archetypes while maintaining accessibility for younger audiences. Ember Lumen functions as a variation of the hero's journey archetype. In traditional storytelling, the hero receives a call to adventure, leaves the familiar world, faces trials, and returns transformed. Ember's call to adventure does not involve physical travel across kingdoms, but emotional exploration beyond the Fire District. Her initial world represents safety, tradition, and responsibility. The external conflict with city regulations acts as a catalyst, but her true journey concerns identity and independence. Each interaction with Wade Ripple expands her perspective, gradually shifting her understanding of who she can become. Wade serves as both romantic lead and narrative catalyst. Within archetypal structure, he can be seen as a guide figure, though not in a conventional mentor role. Instead of teaching Ember through authority, he teaches through empathy. His emotional openness challenges her defensive posture. This dynamic inverts traditional gender archetypes often found in animated romances. Rather than portraying the female lead as emotionally reserved and the male lead as stoic, the film presents vulnerability as a shared strength. This rebalancing contributes to the film's contemporary tone. Family archetypes are central to the story's emotional foundation. Bernie Lumen embodies the devoted parent who equates protection with love. His character reflects the archetype of the guardian, one who sacrifices personal comfort to ensure the next generation's stability. Yet his protective instincts unintentionally create pressure. Cinder Lumen complements him by offering quiet encouragement and emotional balance. Together, they represent dual aspects of parental guidance, discipline, and reassurance. The internal conflict within Ember is one of the film's strongest developmental threads. Early in the narrative, she suppresses her own aspirations in order to meet family expectations. This suppression creates tension that manifests as bursts of anger. Rather than portraying anger as villainous, the story treats it as a signal of unresolved identity. As Ember interacts with Wade and experiences new environments, she begins to question assumptions about her future. This gradual shift illustrates a modern reinterpretation of growth, where self-discovery is as heroic as external victory. Supporting characters also fulfill archetypal roles. Wade's family, including his siblings and extended relatives, introduce comedic energy while reinforcing the theme of interconnectedness. Their presence highlights the communal nature of water culture within the city. Through them, the film emphasizes that identity is shaped not only by individual choice but by community support. Even minor characters contribute to Ember's transformation by exposing her to different perspectives. The hero's journey structure is reflected in the film's major turning points. The discovery of the leak in the shop represents the first threshold crossing. Ember moves from the comfort of routine into uncertainty. The glass-blowing sequence symbolizes the midpoint revelation, where internal change begins to crystallize. The flooding crisis serves as the final ordeal, demanding cooperation rather than isolation. In classic storytelling terms, this is the moment of transformation, where the protagonist must apply lessons learned throughout the journey. Villain archetypes are intentionally softened in Elemental. Instead of a singular antagonist, conflict emerges from circumstances and systems. This design choice reframes the story around collaboration. By removing a traditional enemy, the screenplay shifts focus toward emotional resolution. This modern narrative strategy reflects contemporary trends in animation, where internal growth often replaces external defeat. The romantic arc between Ember and Wade also follows archetypal patterns. Their relationship begins with opposition, transitions into curiosity, deepens through shared vulnerability, and culminates in mutual commitment. This structure mirrors classic tales of opposites attracting, yet it avoids fatalistic tropes. The film emphasizes choice over destiny. Both characters actively decide to pursue their connection, reinforcing themes of agency. Character growth is visually expressed through changes in body language and lighting. Ember's flames become more stable as she gains confidence. Her posture straightens, and her expressions soften. Wade's watery form appears more controlled during moments of emotional clarity, suggesting personal grounding. These subtle shifts communicate development without explicit dialogue. The screenplay balances archetypal familiarity with cultural specificity. While the story aligns with universal patterns of transformation, it is grounded in the immigrant experience. This combination allows the film to feel both timeless and contemporary. Audiences recognize the hero's journey structure, yet they encounter it through the lens of family legacy and identity negotiation. Comedic relief characters also play archetypal roles. They provide tension release and highlight contrast between seriousness and playfulness. Humor often arises from elemental physics, such as unexpected interactions between different types of residents. These moments prevent the narrative from becoming overly heavy, ensuring accessibility for children. Ultimately, the character development in Elemental demonstrates that modern archetypes can evolve without losing emotional power. The protagonist's journey centers on self-definition rather than conquest. The romantic partner embodies empathy rather than rivalry, and the family represents both tradition and growth. Through these roles, the film reimagines classic storytelling structures in a way that reflects contemporary values while maintaining the satisfying rhythm of transformation that audiences have long associated with heroic narratives. In Elemental, costume and character design are not treated as decorative elements, but as extensions of identity. Because the film's characters are made of natural elements rather than fabric and skin, traditional costume design becomes symbolic rather than literal. Still, visual differentiation remains essential for storytelling clarity. Produced within the creative framework of Pixar Animation Studios, the film approaches design with the goal of expressing personality, culture, and community through shape, color, and environment. Ember Lumen's design reflects her inner state. Her form is built around flickering motion, with flame tips that naturally rise and taper. The intensity of her glow communicates emotion in real time. When she is confident, her flames appear steady and bright. When she feels uncertain, the flame subtly dims or wavers. This dynamic quality replaces clothing as a primary expressive tool. Instead of fabric textures, Ember's visual identity depends on light behavior and flame structure. The designers ensured that her silhouette remains readable even during rapid movement, prioritizing clarity for younger viewers. Wade Ripple's design contrasts sharply with Ember's. His body is translucent and rounded, emphasizing fluidity. His edges are smooth, and his movements create gentle ripples rather than sharp gestures. This softness visually reinforces his emotional openness. The transparency of his form allows audiences to see depth within him, which serves as a visual metaphor for honesty. Light passes through him, refracts, and reflects, creating subtle highlights that shift with perspective. This design required careful balancing so that his facial features remained visible at all times. The supporting elemental communities each possess distinct visual identities. Fire residents inhabit spaces constructed from heat-resistant materials with warm palettes and glowing accents. Architecture in these districts features curved lines and protective barriers, suggesting both energy and caution. Water residents live in environments filled with reflective surfaces, flowing channels, and transparent structures. Their spaces feel open and adaptable, reinforcing the concept of movement and change. Air communities are elevated, with light-toned environments and floating elements that suggest freedom and elevation. Earth districts incorporate textured surfaces, grounded materials, and organic shapes that communicate stability. These environmental distinctions function as extensions of cultural identity. Rather than presenting diversity through dialogue alone, the film uses architecture, lighting, and spatial arrangement to communicate difference. Each district's design reflects how its residents navigate the city. Pathways, signage, and infrastructure subtly indicate accessibility or limitation. This visual storytelling allows audiences to understand systemic structures without explicit explanation. Color plays a central role in world building. Warm tones dominate scenes in the Fire District, creating a sense of cohesion and intimacy. Cool tones define water areas, providing contrast and visual relief. When characters from different communities share scenes, color blending becomes symbolic. For example, in moments of close interaction between Ember and Wade, lighting reflects both warmth and coolness, producing layered hues. These combined tones visually represent harmony between opposites. The glass-blowing sequence represents one of the most important intersections of costume, design, and world-building. Glass itself becomes a bridge between fire and water. The glowing molten material reflects Ember's brightness, while responding to Wade's presence. The transparency of glass echoes Wade's form, while its creation depends on Ember's heat. This scene demonstrates how design elements can embody thematic unity without overt exposition. Facial design required special consideration because elemental characters do not have traditional skin textures. Animators relied on expressive eye design to anchor emotion. Ember's eyes are framed by flame, yet they remain the focal point of her expression. Subtle changes in eyelid position and pupil dilation convey thought and feeling. Wade's eyes are similarly emphasized through contrast against his translucent body. Lighting adjustments ensure readability in all environments, even during fast-paced scenes. The film's approach to costume extends metaphorically to accessories and personal details. While Ember and Wade do not wear clothing in the conventional sense, environmental interactions function like costumes. Reflections, shadows, and light patterns temporarily alter their appearance. This dynamic visual layering gives the impression of changing attire while preserving elemental authenticity. For example, when Ember stands near water, reflections introduce cooler highlights into her flames, subtly modifying her presentation. World building also includes transportation systems and public spaces. Bridges, public transit, and shared areas are designed to accommodate multiple elemental types. These details reinforce the theme of coexistence. Architecture adapts to different physical needs, illustrating how society can evolve to support diversity. The film's background artists populated the city with small visual cues, such as district boundaries and community-specific decorations, which enrich immersion without distracting from character focus. The design philosophy prioritizes silhouette recognition. Even in crowded scenes, viewers can quickly distinguish Ember and Wade from background figures. This clarity is crucial for storytelling and animation, where character identification must remain immediate. Strong silhouettes allow audiences to track emotional beats without confusion. The designers tested many variations before finalizing shapes that balanced uniqueness with coherence. Lighting integration further enhances immersion. Because Ember emits light, she influences her surroundings. Her glow casts warm reflections on nearby surfaces, subtly altering environmental color. This interaction reinforces the idea that individuals affect their communities. Similarly, Wade's reflective body interacts with ambient light, sometimes amplifying or diffusing it. These exchanges create visual metaphors for mutual influence. The overall aesthetic combines stylized realism with expressive exaggeration. Textures are simplified to maintain readability, yet environmental details are rich enough to suggest lived-in spaces. This balance prevents the world from feeling either overly abstract or excessively detailed. It supports narrative flow while sustaining visual wonder. Costume and character design in Elemental ultimately serve emotional storytelling. By translating personality into form, color, and motion, the film allows audiences to understand characters intuitively. World-building reinforces thematic ideas about integration and balance, demonstrating how physical spaces can reflect cultural values. Every visual decision, from flame structure to architectural layout, contributes to the sense that Element City is not just a backdrop, but an active participant in the narrative. Through thoughtful design, the film transforms elemental physics into a living society, inviting viewers to explore identity, difference, and connection through the language of imagery. The screenplay of Elemental is carefully constructed to balance intimacy, comedy, and emotional progression. Written through multiple collaborative revisions during production at Pixar Animation Studios, the dialogue reflects the studio's emphasis on character-driven storytelling. Rather than relying on rapid-fire jokes or constant verbal exposition, the film allows conversations to breathe. Silence, facial expression, and visual metaphor often carry as much meaning as spoken words. The dialogue style is naturalistic, designed to feel conversational rather than theatrical. Ember speaks with intensity, often using short sentences when she feels frustrated or defensive. Her words can come quickly when her temper rises, reflecting her internal heat. This rhythm in speech mirrors her elemental nature. When she becomes vulnerable, her sentences lengthen and slow down. These changes in pacing help audiences track her emotional state without explicit explanation. Wade's dialogue contrasts with Ember's in tone and delivery. He speaks gently, frequently expressing empathy or admiration. His sentences often include reassurance, apologies, or reflective observations. This consistent warmth in language reinforces his character as emotionally open. Humor frequently arises from his sincerity. Because he interprets situations through compassion, his responses can create unexpected comedic moments when contrasted with Ember's sharper reactions. The humor in Elemental is character-based rather than situational alone. Jokes often emerge from elemental physics. For example, interactions between fire and water naturally generate playful misunderstandings. When Wade accidentally overextends himself or becomes overly emotional, the visual result can be both humorous and revealing. These moments are carefully timed so that laughter does not undermine emotional stakes. Instead, comedy provides relief between deeper conversations. Recurring comedic beats help maintain continuity. Ember's attempts to manage her temper sometimes lead to exaggerated flame reactions, which are visually amusing while still serving the narrative. Wade's tendency to express feelings openly can also produce gentle humor, especially when his emotional responses overwhelm a scene. These patterns create familiarity, allowing audiences to anticipate character behavior in a satisfying way. Exposition in Elemental is handled primarily through action rather than direct explanation. Instead of lengthy speeches describing the rules of Element City, viewers learn about the world by observing it. District design, public spaces, and character interactions communicate social structure organically. When information must be conveyed, it is woven into dialogue naturally, often during conversations between Ember and Wade as they explore different parts of the city. Screenplay structure supports this balance by alternating between external events and internal reflection. Scenes of movement or citywide challenges are followed by quieter moments of dialogue. This rhythm prevents fatigue and keeps attention focused on character development. Transitions are smooth, often using visual cues or musical underscoring to shift tone. The film also uses repetition as a storytelling device. Certain phrases or ideas return at key moments, gaining new meaning each time. Early statements about responsibility or family expectation reappear later in altered form, reflecting Ember's growth. This technique allows the audience to witness transformation without explicit narration. Humor sometimes accompanies these repetitions, softening potentially heavy themes. Timing is essential in animated comedy. The animators and directors work closely to synchronize physical gestures with dialogue delivery. A pause before a punchline, a subtle eye movement, or a slight shift in posture can enhance comedic impact. Because animation allows precise control over movement, these details are meticulously crafted. The result is humor that feels spontaneous even though it is carefully engineered. Dialogue between Ember and her father carries particular emotional weight. Their conversations begin with frustration and misunderstanding. The screenplay ensures that neither character becomes one-dimensional. Bernie's words are rooted in love, while Ember's responses are shaped by ambition and uncertainty. The tension between them is expressed through pauses, interruptions, and overlapping speech patterns. These techniques mirror real family dynamics, where communication can be imperfect yet meaningful. Romantic dialogue between Ember and Wade evolves gradually. Early exchanges focus on curiosity and shared problem-solving. As trust builds, conversations become more personal. The screenplay avoids rushing declarations of love. Instead, affection grows through small acknowledgments, supportive statements, and moments of honesty. This gradual development makes the relationship feel earned rather than instantaneous. Humor also plays a role in world building. Interactions with background characters introduce cultural variety and social complexity. Comedic misunderstandings across elemental types allow audiences to grasp differences in behavior and environment. These moments reinforce the idea that diversity requires adaptation, but they do so in a lighthearted manner suitable for family audiences. Exposition regarding the city's infrastructure is often delivered visually. For example, scenes showing how public spaces accommodate different elemental needs communicate societal design without lengthy explanation. When dialogue addresses rules or regulations, it is typically embedded within character interactions, ensuring that information feels relevant to the plot rather than inserted artificially. The screenplay structure follows a clear emotional arc, but it avoids predictability by focusing on character choice. Conflicts arise organically from decisions made by the protagonists. Humor frequently softens transitions between rising tension and resolution. This blend ensures that younger viewers remain engaged while older audiences appreciate thematic depth. Silence functions as an important counterpart to dialogue. Some of the most powerful scenes contain minimal speech. During moments of reflection or reconciliation, the absence of words allows facial expression and music to carry emotion. This restraint demonstrates confidence in visual storytelling. When characters finally speak in these moments, their words feel significant because they emerge from quiet contemplation. The screenplay's balance of comedy and sincerity reflects the broader storytelling philosophy of the studio. Humor supports emotion rather than replacing it. Dialogue advances character development rather than simply delivering information. Timing, repetition, and conversational rhythm create a cohesive narrative flow that feels natural. The marketing campaign for Elemental was carefully designed to introduce audiences to a new kind of animated romance while highlighting the visual innovation and emotional depth of the film. Released by Walt Disney Pictures in collaboration with Pixar Animation Studios, the promotional strategy focused on character chemistry, world building, and the striking contrast between fire and water. Rather than presenting the film as a conventional action-adventure, trailers emphasized the romantic core and the emotional journey of Ember and Wade. Early teaser materials leaned heavily on visual spectacle. Audiences were introduced to the glowing warmth of the fire district and the shimmering transparency of water characters. Short promotional clips highlighted the animation technology behind the elemental designs, demonstrating how fire could express emotion and how water could move with personality. These visuals were shared widely across social media platforms, generating curiosity about how such complex characters would function within a full narrative. Character-focused marketing played a central role. Trailers showcased the growing relationship between Ember Lumen and Wade Ripple, emphasizing their emotional differences and mutual curiosity. The campaign framed the story as a romance built on opposites attracting, appealing not only to families but also to young adults. Promotional interviews with director Peter Sohn often centered on the personal inspiration behind the film, reinforcing authenticity as a key selling point. Music also became part of the marketing strategy. The original song Steal the Show by Lauv was released alongside the film's promotional materials. Its contemporary sound helped position Elemental as both a classic-style animated feature and a modern love story. The song circulated on streaming platforms prior to and during the film's theatrical run, allowing audiences to connect emotionally before entering theaters. Its inclusion in trailers further strengthened the romantic tone of the campaign. Global marketing efforts adapted messaging to different regions while maintaining consistent visual branding. Posters and advertisements emphasized the elemental contrast, often depicting Ember and Wade side by side in vibrant color compositions. In many countries, localized promotional interviews and events highlighted the universal themes of family, identity, and acceptance. This adaptability contributed to the film's strong international presence, especially in markets that value family-oriented storytelling. Social media engagement amplified audience awareness. Official accounts shared behind-the-scenes clips, character introductions, and short animations explaining the world of Element City. Interactive content encouraged viewers to identify with a particular element, fostering playful engagement. Fans participated in online discussions about whether they related more to fire, water, air, or earth, turning marketing into an extension of the film's thematic exploration of identity. Brand partnerships extended Elemental's visibility beyond the cinema. Merchandise collaborations included apparel lines, school supplies, toys, and home goods featuring character designs. Plush versions of Ember and Wade became popular among children, while collectible items appealed to older fans. These products reinforced the visual identity of the film, using its distinctive color palette of warm reds and cool blues to maintain consistency across platforms. Retail displays in major stores featured immersive setups that recreated Element City aesthetics. Promotional materials emphasized the glow of fire characters and the fluidity of water designs. These displays were designed to capture attention in family-oriented shopping environments, aligning the film with seasonal release periods and holiday marketing cycles. The branding strategy focused on emotional warmth and inclusivity rather than competition or spectacle. Theme park integration further strengthened global reach. Character appearances and interactive experiences at Disney parks introduced visitors to Ember and Wade in live environments. Lighting effects and costume performers simulated the visual qualities of fire and water, creating memorable encounters for families. These experiences extended the narrative beyond the screen, transforming characters into tangible ambassadors of the brand. International box office performance played a significant role in the film's long-term reach. While initial domestic projections were modest compared to previous releases, strong international turnout contributed substantially to overall success. Audiences in multicultural urban centers responded particularly well to the immigrant narrative and themes of coexistence. This global resonance demonstrated the film's ability to transcend cultural boundaries. Press coverage during the marketing phase often highlighted the film's originality within an industry increasingly dominated by sequels and established franchises. Promotional interviews emphasized the value of new intellectual property and personal storytelling. Discussions around the film's development process reinforced its status as a passion project rather than a formula-driven production. Educational outreach also contributed indirectly to marketing visibility. Teachers and community leaders referenced the film in discussions about diversity and empathy. While not an official educational campaign, this organic adoption expanded awareness among families. Word of mouth from schools and community groups reinforced the film's reputation as a conversation starter. As the theatrical run progressed, marketing strategies adapted to emphasize audience testimonials and positive reactions. Social media posts highlighted emotional responses, encouraging new viewers to experience the film in theaters. This shift reflected confidence in the film's ability to grow through sustained engagement rather than opening weekend dominance. Home media and streaming promotion later extended the brand's lifespan. Digital campaigns reminded audiences of the film's romantic storyline and visual beauty, inviting repeat viewings. Thumbnail imagery focused on Ember and Wade together, reinforcing their partnership as the emotional center of the narrative. This consistent branding ensured recognition across platforms. Globally, Elemental's messaging remained consistent. Love can bridge differences, identity can evolve, and communities can coexist. This universal appeal made the film adaptable to diverse cultural contexts. Promotional materials avoided region-specific alterations to the core story, instead emphasizing shared human experiences. Elemental occupies a distinctive place within contemporary animated cinema because it blends romantic storytelling, cultural allegory, and advanced visual experimentation in a way that both honors tradition and reflects modern sensibilities. When compared to earlier animated classics and major studio releases, the film reveals how the medium has evolved in tone, thematic ambition, and audience expectations. Produced by Pixar Animation Studios, Elemental continues a legacy of emotionally driven storytelling while also signaling shifts in narrative focus and stylistic priorities within the broader animation landscape. One useful comparison comes from the tradition of fairy tale-inspired films that emphasize romance and transformation. For example, The Lion King demonstrates a classical hero's journey structure centered on identity, responsibility, and return to community. While that film frames its story around royal succession and destiny, Elemental reframes similar themes through the lens of family business and personal choice. Both stories explore generational expectations, yet Elemental grounds its conflict in everyday life rather than monarchy or epic exile. This difference reflects a modern tendency in animation to focus on intimate settings rather than grand mythic kingdoms. Another instructive comparison is with musical-driven storytelling such as Frozen. Frozen blends powerful songs with themes of self-acceptance and sisterhood, using music as a primary vehicle for emotional revelation. Elemental, by contrast, integrates music more subtly, relying on orchestral score and contemporary end-credit songs rather than character-performed musical numbers. This distinction highlights a shift in how animated films can communicate emotion. Instead of characters singing their internal struggles, Elemental allows visual design, dialogue, and instrumental music to carry emotional weight. This approach creates a quieter, more conversational tone while still appealing to broad audiences. In terms of social allegory and urban world building, comparisons can also be drawn with films like Zootopia. That film uses anthropomorphic animals to explore prejudice, societal roles, and systemic bias within a metropolitan setting. Elemental similarly constructs a city populated by diverse groups, each living in districts tailored to their needs. However, where Zootopia leans into mystery and investigation, Elemental centers on romance and family legacy. The thematic overlap lies in coexistence and empathy, but the narrative execution differs. Elemental avoids a detective structure and instead focuses on emotional intimacy between two central characters. This contrast illustrates how animated allegory can take multiple narrative forms while addressing similar societal questions. Within the studio's own catalog, Elemental reflects an evolution in storytelling philosophy. Earlier works often combined ensemble casts, high adventure, and comedic momentum. While Elemental contains humor and supporting characters, its emotional core remains tightly focused on Ember Lumen and Wade Ripple. This concentration on a central romantic relationship marks a notable distinction from many previous releases. The film's willingness to foreground a love story in an animated family feature demonstrates the medium's expanding boundaries. Stylistically, Elemental also represents continued technical progression in digital animation. Compared to earlier computer-animated films that prioritized realistic textures and environmental detail, Elemental pushes simulation technology further by giving natural elements personality and emotional expression. The integration of fire and water as protagonists required innovative rendering techniques and dynamic lighting systems. While earlier films achieved milestones in realism and character animation, Elemental combines those achievements with highly stylized elemental physics. This balance of technical realism and expressive exaggeration reflects how animation has matured into a medium capable of both spectacle and subtlety. Another point of comparison involves films that emphasize ensemble friendship dynamics, such as the original era of animated adventure stories. In contrast, Elemental narrows its focus to a romantic partnership. This shift signals a broader trend in animation toward diverse narrative genres beyond traditional action-driven plots. By centering a cross-elemental romance, the film demonstrates that animated features can explore adult emotional experiences while remaining accessible to children. This genre blending helps redefine expectations for family entertainment. Elemental also differs in tone from darker or more villain-centered animated stories. Instead of a singular antagonist driving conflict, the narrative relies on systemic challenges and personal growth. This approach aligns with contemporary storytelling trends that prioritize internal transformation over external conquest. Audiences are invited to reflect on communication, compromise, and empathy rather than defeat of an enemy. This structural decision distinguishes Elemental within a competitive field of animated releases. In terms of representation, the film reflects ongoing efforts within major studios to tell culturally specific stories grounded in personal experience. By drawing inspiration from director Peter Sohn, the film contributes to a growing body of animated works shaped by individual heritage. Compared to earlier eras of animation, where narratives were often more generalized, Elemental embraces specificity as a strength. This evolution suggests that animation continues to expand its range of voices and perspectives. When placed alongside classic romance narratives in animation, Elemental stands out for its deliberate pacing. Many earlier films accelerate toward dramatic climaxes with heightened conflict and resolution. Elemental, while containing a significant climax, invests substantial time in character interaction and gradual emotional development. This patience allows relationships to feel authentic. It also reflects a confidence that audiences are willing to engage with quieter storytelling. From a visual standpoint, Elemental contributes to the ongoing refinement of digital artistry. Compared to films that rely heavily on anthropomorphic animals or fantasy creatures with fixed physical forms, Elemental's shifting elemental bodies represent a new frontier. Fire and water characters demand constant simulation and lighting recalculation. This technical complexity underscores how animation continues to innovate beyond traditional character models. The film demonstrates that imagination can extend even into the behavior of natural forces. Within the broader evolution of animated cinema, Elemental illustrates a transition toward genre diversity. Animation is no longer confined to musical fairy tales or comedic adventures. It now encompasses romance, cultural allegory, psychological exploration, and intimate drama. Elemental's focus on generational relationships and personal independence aligns with this diversification. It reflects an industry increasingly comfortable telling stories that resonate with adults while remaining suitable for families.